The scariest point of any project, that moment when new scope creeps in. Unrealistic expectations are set, frustrations and tension rise. Someone says that it's the agile way of working to accept changing requirements, even late in development. How do you handle it? Well, I have a few insights to share with you in this video. Hey, it's Daria here. Welcome. Let's build some awesome teams who can magically complete all of the scope creep before the deadline. Okay, those are some of the unrealistic expectations right there. What I mean is, there isn't a magic solution that will make everyone happy and will make all of your problems go away. I know that is what people are looking for, but I'm just being honest with you. Then what can you do? 3 words. Inspect and adapt. Basically, review how new scope is affecting your plans and adjust them accordingly. And of course, I have actionable advice for you in this video that you can implement in your situation right away. So keep watching. Here's what you need to know going into this. First, your initial plans are very likely to be incorrect anyway. Second, changes in requirements will happen because of the nature of the work your team does. And third, managing scope creep is not about making magic happen, it's about setting the right expectations. So let's see how you apply this knowledge in practice. But before I continue, as always, you know it already, if you are not subscribed yet, and I know that over 70% of you are not, remember to click that subscribe button below, as well as that notification bell to never miss a video from me. Okay, scope creep, magic solutions, setting expectations. Let's get into this. Should scope creep be expected? You might be wondering, is the goal here to be able to manage the scope creep or to avoid it altogether? And if you are working with software or just new product development, you will not be able to just avoid all scope creep. And if you do focus on that avoidance too much, then you're not really helping your product long term. You're basically setting it up for failure. When we work with complex products, such as software, we must expect changes because there are many factors that may impact your success and your progress. And I do not mean someone has a shiny object syndrome and just wants something just because. I mean, here are a few valid reasons for making changes to your plans and your scope. The solution or technology you initially wanted to use is found to be too costly to implement in terms of money, time, or effort. A feature or capability you planned to build turned out to be irrelevant to the users. There is a major issue in the product that has to be addressed ASAP because the product is unusable otherwise. Those are just 3 examples. If you don't change in these situations and just blindly follow your initial plan, you're putting your whole product at risk and also wasting your team's time and company's money. So it's not about avoiding that scope creep, it's about managing it properly. I talk about this topic in my product owner guide that you can find in the store. That whole concept comes from the difference between product and project thinking. Just to make sure we are on the same page. What is scope creep? Well, here's what the Wikipedia has to say. Scope creep in project management refers to changes, continuous or uncontrolled growth in the project scope at any point after the project begins. This can occur when the scope of a project is not properly defined or documented or controlled and is generally considered harmful. From the team point of view, scope creep means that the team is being asked to do much more work without any changes to the deadlines. First thing to do when scope creep happens is to identify if that scope creep is valid. As I mentioned earlier, there are some reasons that would make changes to your initial plans required. However, there are other reasons that don't validate those changes. So your first action when scope creep happens is to investigate it and identify the reasoning behind it. You will need to review your current product backlog, your current plan, and see how that new scope compares to everything else you have. One big question to ask: is this new scope more important than everything else in our product backlog? And if not, then a follow-up question: is this new scope more important than some of the work planned in our product backlog? To know what's more important, you need to have some kind of criteria or even simple metrics in place. Attention. Just because something is urgent, it doesn't mean it is automatically important. How is that possible? Let's say I'm working on a new guide to launch in my store by the end of the week. This is a money-generating opportunity for my business from a business standpoint. And suddenly, I receive an invite to, let's say, a meetup, but I have to reply and prepare a presentation for it this week, the week that I'm working on my new guide and a new product launch. It's urgent. I need to do it now or I won't do it at all. This is a business decision to make. Which is more important, the new guide or the meetup? Initially, it might seem that I must work on that urgent task first since it's urgent. And this is usually how many companies operate. However, from a business point of view, if I postpone the launch of a new product, I will suffer a greater opportunity cost as I will be losing potential business revenue. While this task was urgent, it was less important than whatever I had in my product backlog. Maybe that meetup will invite me back in the future. Who knows? By the way, I talked about it and shared a useful decision matrix for teams in one of my older videos called Time Management and Prioritization for Scrum Teams. It was still on my old microphone and my old camera, so not the best maybe quality that you would expect to see from my videos now, but it still has some very good and important information, so check it out. For the sake of this video, let's say we have some new scope that we have identified as more important than what we have in our product backlog. The next step to take here is to decide what will change. Move the deadline or reduce the initial scope. I know what you'll hear or say yourself. We can change the deadline and we cannot change the initial scope. Okay, got it. Here's what's going to happen. If you add something new into your backlog, you need to make some changes to your plan. Either you extend your timeline to accommodate for that new work, or you remove something of a similar size from your backlog. This is another important business decision to make, and it needs to be made by whoever is accountable for the outcome. So most likely it's going to be your product owner or your stakeholders if you do not have a product owner. Another big question here: what is more important for us in this milestone? Getting it done before a certain date or building a set amount of features? Just remember, both is not an answer here. This is a binary type of question. Why it's not an answer? Well, because we're not magicians. Realistically, no matter how hard you try to fit more work into the same capacity, you won't be able to achieve the expected result. Everything in this situation is a trade-off.
A few moments later.
I realized that you actually do have a third answer. Here are your choices. 1. Add new scope, move the delivery date. 2. Keep the deadline, remove something of similar size from your initial scope. Or 3. Try to cram in more scope into the same timeline and get a crappy product and lose your team. If you push the team to do that third option, what will most likely happen is that you'll get poor quality deliverables and exhausted people who lost all motivation. The choice is yours.
Okay.
Whether you choose option 1 or 2, because of course you're not going to choose number 3, right? Right? You need to do some estimating and forecasting. If you decided to move the date further out, you would need to estimate the new scope and identify the new likely delivery date based on the progress the team has made so far. This is still not a guarantee though, but it is much more realistic. We're setting expectations, remember? If you decided to remove some scope, then you would still need to estimate, but you will also need to do some additional prioritization. You would need to decide what is less important in our initial list of work and also remove enough work to accommodate for that new stuff you are adding. And yes, you guessed it, it's still not a guarantee, just more realistic forecasts. Let's talk about how it may be impacting you and your role in the organization and what you should do. If you're a Scrum Master, you most likely need to do a lot of teaching and coaching on that concept of forecasting and changing plans. You need to help others understand how we plan in a complex business environment and how to apply the principles of empiricism to our work. As the Scrum Guide 2020 highlight one or two of the potential Scrum Master responsibilities, they are helping establish empirical product planning for a complex environment and helping employees and stakeholders understand and enact an empirical approach for complex work. If that all sounds like total gibberish, you'll need to work on that and build the knowledge needed to teach others, right? You're the expert on Agile and Scrum. And for that, I have a great online course available that is called The Fundamentals of Agile. I have specifically designed it to help you become an expert in complex Agile concepts and be able to apply them in real life. Check it out, the link is in the description. If you are a product owner, you will most likely need to work closely with your stakeholders to give them visibility into the team's progress, as well as communicate any changes as soon as they happen. This will require good negotiation and mediation skills, as you might be making some stakeholders quite unhappy with your Agile approach to planning. You will also need to implement some good metrics that will help you make decisions around what scope change should or shouldn't happen. In addition, having a tool set of great prioritization techniques, especially if you have several different stakeholders that might not all be agreeing to each other. You will need those special techniques definitely to help prioritize. If you are a team member, you will need to understand the empirical approach to planning in a complex environment yourself, and this would include knowing relative estimation techniques used in Agile. You also should be comfortable with uncertainty, as you will need to make decisions without having all of the information. Basically, you need to be able to avoid analysis paralysis. And then you most likely will need to communicate with stakeholders from time to time when new scope comes your way and have the courage to say no. And if you're a manager or a stakeholder, you should be aware of planning and forecasting approach in a complex environment once again, or maybe seek out your Scrum Master to help you understand it better. You will need to have courage to trust your team, even if maybe you don't have that trust yet. You need to set up good goals and be open to changes in scope or changes in deadlines. Yeah, I know, that sounds scary. You must reduce the command and control management approach to a minimum or eliminate it completely. Since you most likely will be the person directly working with the customers, you need to know how to negotiate and communicate with them when changes happen in a productive way. As you can see, everybody has a role to play when it comes to the scope creep. So let's do a quick summary of what we have covered in this video. 1. You shouldn't be avoiding scope creep, but instead learn how to manage it properly. 2. When scope creep happens, the first action is to identify if it is valid. 3. Then decide whether you are going to move the deadline or reduce the initial scope. And 4. Communicate the changes to everyone who might be impacted by it as soon as possible. That is it for this video. I hope you learned something new, and if you did, remember to give this video a thumbs up and comment down below, what have you learned today? If you're looking for guides and templates to help you on your professional journey, check in the Scrum Masters store. I have lots of great resources that can definitely help you. All of the links will be down in the description. And I'll see you in the next video. Thank you for watching. Cheers and Scrum on!